Guys, welcome back to the channel. So a lot of
JAGRIT got into Oxford.
thanks.
Shout out.
Yeah. A great weekend, I would say, for football. There were some big matches, and I think few surprising losses as well. But more importantly, I think what's come out from both Champions League and even the Prem season so far is that there's one team leading both of them, Liverpool, and they've kind of built a lead in the Premier League, and they're also doing pretty comfortably, sitting at the top of the Champions League table. What is your kind of opinion of Liverpool season till now, and how are their players performing right now?
I think Liverpool right now, based on form, has to be the best team in Europe. There is no argument. I know a lot of people were comparing Liverpool and Barcelona as the two best teams in Europe right now, but I do feel Liverpool has that edge because being top in the Premier League, being top in the Champions League, when at the start of the season you were even struggling to keep your main players,
Yeah.
is a big deal. I think this Arne Slot's magic or Arne Slot's tactics are doing very well for Liverpool. They're doing absolutely amazing on the counter attack. And Mohamed Salah, I mean, I can't talk enough about this guy. I always think that this will be the season where that downfall or that age factor will come into play. But
Yeah.
I think I just read the stats. There's only been one season ever since he's joined Liverpool where he scored less than 20 goals.
Yeah.
And that was the season when they won the league. And that is in itself saying something that Salah is establishing himself again and again that why he is one of the best players to ever play the Premier League. He's one of the best Premier League wingers of the modern times. And again, with the whole situation, with the whole manager changing, Liverpool have done so well in the Champions League and in the Premier League. Again, an argument can be made that they haven't really faced a real proper challenge in the Champions League, other than maybe say Leverkusen. But they also didn't start the season very well. Leverkusen set like third or fourth in the table.
Yeah.
But I think keep being on top in the Premier League where other teams are struggling is where I've seen most clubs struggle. It's not important to win all of your matches, but it's important to capitalize on those games when you're seeing your rivals like City and Arsenal dropping points
Yeah.
every week and establishing that lead so that there is that buffer to mess up later in the season where we know that teams like Arsenal have known to struggle.
Yeah.
So that is why I feel like Liverpool are on the perfect right track. I'm very excited to see how this team will play against Real Madrid, which is going to be their next Champions League fixtures. But yes, I'm very surprised by Liverpool, and I have to say that Liverpool, not by far, but is surely the best team in Europe right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think every attacker for Liverpool is doing really well. Luis Diaz, he's playing really well. Even Gakpo, he's played really well in few matches. And Salah, of course, I think there's like the consistency he has shown is like next to none. I mean, since Messi, Ronaldo, I've hardly seen players who's like. It's been 8 or 9 years in Liverpool, and he's always been goals, assists, above 20, 25 goals in all competitions. And again, he's like 14 goals and assists already. I think it's crazy to see the level of consistency this guy has. And this is when his front three, which was the original Liverpool front three, have also kind of moved out. The team has went into the full transition. There's a new manager also right now. And irrespective of what's going on, what is happening left, right, or center, I think this guy has just shown what his quality is, what type of player he is. He, in any system, in any manager, in any kind of team scenario, he will perform his best. He will score the goals for you. He'll provide those assists and all. So I think it's definitely he has cemented himself as a legend already in the game. And it's just amazing to see a guy at his level, at his age, kind of performing every week. And even last week he scored again. So I think it's very great to see, and it's privileged to see Salah kind of being in his prime right now, or kind of performing as well. And I think overall Liverpool, I think they've been just excellent. And you're right, like that buffer that really helps in the later half of the season. And honestly, with what I've seen with Arsenal and City, I don't think so catching up will be that easy at all. It's hard to see maybe if Rodri comes back, but he's also out for long. But it's hard to see both of those teams kind of getting back into that, like the consistency we've seen in other years where everyone is going for like those perfect 99-100 points. I don't think so that is going to happen this season in Premier League. I think it will be a much closer Premier League season. And they are already 5 points ahead of the second team. And I think if they continue on the same path, if they kind of pick up points in every match and like avoid losing and everything, which they have done really, really well. And even their defense is pretty solid. I think if you look at Trent, his attacking numbers has reduced slightly, but his defensive numbers overall has improved. And I think it's just exceptional to see how well this team is performing right now, even with like one or two injuries here and there. Allison is out, Kelleher comes in, and you hardly see the difference in the team. I think it's even more impressive. Like they are doing it at both fronts. I know Champions League. It's a newer format. There's just 4 matches. It's hard to say if how well that is, but winning 4 out of your 4 matches is the best thing that you could have done. And there's some impressive wins, like Bayer Leverkusen 4-0 was a very impressive win for Liverpool. So I think for sure they've been the most kind of impressive team this season in Europe. And I think they have a really, really good chance, especially with what the other teams have shown till now, to go for trophies this season. I think earlier in the season we were kind of thinking if their midfield is settled, if they have that, the whole how the transition everything will work. But I think the way they've started and the way kind of Slot is managing, it seems like he's a veteran Liverpool manager. And I was also reading the stat that I think he's of the first 16 managers in Premier League, he has won the most. He's overtaken, I think, Mourinho or some other manager. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive to see how well he has started also. So, yeah, I think all good news for Liverpool, and I genuinely think this can be a very, very good season for them.
Yeah, and with the part where you said where Alisson was injured, Liverpool still has the most clean sheets in the Premier League. That means that defense is rock solid. It's so interesting, like it's so nice when a keeper like Keller, right? He gets his chance where the main keeper gets injured, and that's how keepers become the main players. Emiliano Martinez was the biggest example where how he proved himself in Arsenal when their main keeper was injured. And also, I think the difference between last season or last to last season's Liverpool and this season's Liverpool is that Salah is not the only one performing. He's getting that support in attack, in midfield, and in defense as well. Because if you look at the stats, Salah has performed every season well. But I think this rise of Luis Diaz doing exactly what Liverpool signed them for a few seasons ago, finally coming into form, and Cody Gakpo as well, they never were very exciting players to watch in the past few seasons. They weren't performing to the level or the reason why Liverpool signed them for. But I think given that he's getting that support in the attack as well, and they have Chiesa as well. He still hasn't played, but I think once he comes back from his injury, can come off as a very good backup option, because even though Chiesa's form is depleted in the past few years, but we know what he's capable of. We've seen his heroics for Italy. We've seen his heroics for Juventus as well. So I think all in all, Liverpool are in a very comfortable spot, and I think Liverpool just have to make sure that they don't do things wrong. They should continue this rhythm. Keep a loss here and there is okay. They lost to Nottingham Forest as well. And another good part is Liverpool has played. I think apart from City, they played every big team in the top 6 right now. So that also gives them the edge that their tough fixtures have gone. At least one of their tough fixtures have gone, and now they'll have comparatively an easier route till Christmas, where they can actually cement by say like a 8 or a 10-point gap, which will be impossible to chase.
Correct. Yeah, no, makes sense.
And I think a lot about how Liverpool is performing good also has to do with how other clubs have been doing in Premier League. I think this is the first time ever in Pep's career that he's managerial career that he's lost 4 games in a row. With a club like City, which started off really well, we expected them to do nothing less than what they were doing last season. We were even expecting them to be champions again this season at the start. And that's how they started as well. They were on the top for most of the time. It was a close battle between them and Liverpool. But what do you think went wrong for City? Those constant losses, be it against Brighton or that thrashing against Ruben Amorim's Sporting Lisbon 4-1 in the Champions League?
Yeah, no, there's definitely something off with City this season. It's pretty clear. I think you can put it on injuries, De Bruyne, Rodri. Even in defense, you can say that all players haven't been available all the time. But I think there's also maybe after 4 years winning continuously Premier League, there isn't as much drive within the players. There's a lot of players who've kind of done it routinely, and there's also a lot of players who've just joined, or they've kind of not seen that City success. So it might be difficult to be that motivated every week. And I think it could be one of the reasons, because genuinely this is This is unprecedented for Pep. We've never seen him being in this position. Even when he initially joined City in the 2016 season, and they weren't the best team defensively, they still used to be inconsistent, but they never had a losing streak or anything of that sort. So I think this is genuinely the first time I've kind of seen where it just seems like City aren't gelling that well. I think even if you look at attack, Haaland is playing really well. Like he scored those acrobatic kicks, goals, and everything. But overall, if you look at the creativity in the team, that has dropped. If you look at kind of goals from midfield, I think that has dropped. Earlier, like there used to be Bernardo Silva who's scoring goals, Sterling or De Bruyne who's scoring goals. I think apart from Nunez in few matches, I've really seen hardly any player kind of scoring goals for them. I think Guardiola has been good. But I think that is something which is missing from them. Another kind of support for Haaland or a different kind of approach to attack. I think that is still missing for them. And I think that's the bigger problem that we've seen them win without De Bruyne as well. But almost it seems like this season that if De Bruyne and Rodri aren't playing, they aren't at their level. I think something has to also be said about Foden. I know he was injured. He didn't start. He wasn't in full fitness when he started the season. But even when he has played, I don't think so. He's looking as the best player in Premier League, which he was last year. So I think he also needs to pick up kind of the pace and kind of pull City out of this slump. I do think they'll come. Of course, they'll come out of this. But I think the bigger challenge is how far Liverpool are right now from them. So they are already 5 points ahead, and if like any of this slump continues, I think in 3 weeks' time they're matching up against each other. So I think that's a big match for them. If they lose against Liverpool and Liverpool extends the leads to like 8-10 points going into the Christmas or New Year's break, I think that's genuinely a big kind of hill to climb back. And I think Guardiola also has to kind of look at different things because clearly the kind of system he is playing where I think it's too focused on Haaland, it's too focused on kind of feeding Haaland is probably not working as well as the other system where there used to be multiple kind of wingers running in behind and the team was more kind of based on midfield rather than attacking through the wing. So yeah, I think a lot of thinking for Guardiola and the City team. I still think they have probably the deepest kind of bench or squad in the Premier League, so they can still compete in all competitions and all. But I think a lot of players have been quite underwhelming for City this season.
And that's what we spoke about in one of the past videos as well, where we said that City might not be able to win anything this season because their best player is injured.
Yeah.
And that tells you about the impact of a player like Rodri.
Yeah.
And which people don't seem to notice, that you can see his absence in City both attackingly and defensively, because he was that kind of player who would be as good in attack and be as supportive in defense at the same time, would score those crucial goals. Of course, De Bruyne is De Bruyne.
Yeah.
There is no other way to say it, that he is the main creator. He's the best creator in the world. He has been for the past few years. But that lack of, like Haaland is as good, like that the biggest, criticism against Haaland has always been that Haaland has always been as good as the balls that he has received. Of course, he's scored some bangers. He's a great player, but his main role is finishing. He's a literal definition of a number 9.
Yeah.
If you're not able to get those balls to him, he won't be able to score. Correct. And they have so many exciting players. There's Doku, there's Savinho, there's the best player in the Premier League, Phil Foden last year, like you said. But I don't see them finding their rhythm. Gundogan was back, and Gundogan was a crucial part in City's title-winning campaign last season. But I don't see this team gelling that well, and I think this international break might be a good time for Pep to properly analyze and see what they're doing wrong. And of course, City can still win the league. You know how City has been. Arsenal's been on top for the longest time, and City somehow in the end swooped their way in. They've always been like that. Because in the latter half, I feel like they perform better than most teams in the Premier League. So I do think City still has a chance. But at the same time, I feel like Guardiola should really be, thinking of what is going wrong and how can he take that team, to the top without De Bruyne and Rodri. Because I feel like that has to be one of his biggest City challenges till now, even though he struggled in the first few seasons, like you said. But from a team who's won 4 Premier Leagues in a row, I feel like it shouldn't be that difficult for him to figure out a way around those two players as well.
No, correct. I think Rodri again. It's been kind of proven if you look at the record with and without Rodri how effective he is for City. But you can't be so dependent on one player for your transition between defense and attack, between how your midfield runs. I think there has to be a better kind of method to it because even City one is they've not been able to score as much, but they are also conceding a lot, which also has to say to a lot of the form of, let's say, Kyle Walker. He hasn't played that well. Also, he's not played Stones and Diaz and Akanji and Ake that consistently together. So maybe that is also something which he should think of, like maybe have a settled defense for a while. Because the next three matches are pretty difficult for City. They play Tottenham, which is kind of known as their bogey team. Tottenham has beaten City many times, in fact, if I can remember. And then they go to Feyenoord in the Champions League, which again, since they've lost to Sporting the way that they did, I think they want to come back again. And then after that, they go to Anfield, which is again, we've talked about. It's a really, really big game for City right now. They can't afford losing more points and kind of letting that gap grow. So I agree. I think Guardiola, it's kind of a really difficult spot he has been throughout his career. I think this is one of the most difficult spots for him. And the next 3 weeks post the international break, I think all eyes have to be on City to see how well they're kind of bouncing back from this, or if not, this can very well be like something which decides their season, if they'll win or they'll not win any trophy.
Yeah, even after Liverpool, I can see they're playing Nottingham Forest, who've been absolutely amazing this season,
Yeah.
and they have beaten Liverpool.
Yeah.
They've conceded very few goals. They're in the they've been in the top four. They're actually challenging for a top four spot this season, which is really good as well, right? So I think even Nottingham Forest is going to be a challenge, and I think this is the worst time for City to lose 4 games in a row, because that confidence will be really important going forward for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
In fact, given that their fixture list is not the easiest.
I agree.
And moving forward, I think from like going down the Premier League table, we come to the club that has always been an enigma. That is supposed to be, one of the clubs that were rising from the dead, were challenging from the Premier League. But it looks like they started the season well, but it looks like they're not going to, it's going to be a long wait for Arsenal fans again until they see their team lifting a Premier League title. I am not sure what's going wrong with Arsenal. They started the season pretty well. I get it that Odegaard got injured, but in a few matches, it didn't seem like they missed Odegaard that much. But I think the main problem for me with Arsenal has been, like, I remember watching the game against Chelsea as well. They were creating enough. I know it was an evenly matched game, but they were creating enough. There were good chances being created. Saka has been in good form ever since he started, even though a small injury was there. But I think they still don't have a proper finisher. They're not able to, properly capitalize on their chances. And I think that is where, that is what separates a great team, a champion, from a team that will always stay in the top 4. Yeah. And I feel like for Arsenal, and even for Arsenal fans, even though Arteta has revolutionized this club apparently, they're getting impatient. They're getting very, very impatient, because till when will they, excuse Arteta for finishing second and third, and understand that, okay, what, we're doing well, we can't sack Arteta. We're doing well, we can't sack Arteta. But at some point, it's been 3 years. You need to be expecting some results. And I thought this might be the season where Arsenal fans would be like, oh, we have to win the Premier League this season. Because I think last season, they came so close to winning it and they bottled it.
Yeah.
I feel like Arsenal fans must be starting to get very impatient with Arteta. And I think if the season doesn't go well for them, they would probably be asking for a change.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, for Arsenal, I think even Premier League, but the expectation from Arteta is to win a trophy. I think they have to perform well in Champions League also, which I think they've done well, but it's not that level again, which you will expect. In Premier League, I think that's the major issue right now, because they're 9 points off Liverpool. They've kind of not won in the Premier League in the last 4 matches. And I think the issue for them is that once Odegaard was injured, they kind of put back Havertz, who started the season really well. They put him back in the midfield, and they were trying Trossard, they were trying Jesus and all. And now then, once Odegaard is back, they are then pushing Havertz again into the forward position. Which again, if you keep changing the player that much between such different roles, the player also gets out of sync. Like Havertz was playing really, really well. He was in his full momentum and everything. I don't think so. It was a great decision by Arteta to kind of pull Havertz back a little. And I agree. I think they like Saka picked up a lot of the creativity burden once Odegaard went out, but still they weren't able to win a lot of matches. They've lost to kind of Inter Milan, they've lost to Newcastle, and even few matches. I think it's been quite disappointing to see the kind of matches they've lost. And one of the bigger issues has also been this red cards that they've picked up. I think it was like 3 or 4 red cards already this season. I think in any match, if you get a red card, you're on a back foot. But even in crucial matches like Liverpool and all, you just cannot afford these things. So I think it's a really big kind of issue for them, because what's also happening is one of their key players, Declan Rice, he hasn't performed at that level. He's been really disappointing, and I think his lack of defensive effort, or let's say just defensive actions in general, has affected their defense a lot as well. I think last season it was such a solid defense of Gabriel, Saliba, Raya, Declan Rice. I mean, it's still a pretty good backline, but I think Declan Rice hasn't been performing that well. His positioning has been off in few matches. His kind of pressing hasn't been at that level, which again, I mean, it could be burnout for some sort. He's been playing regularly for so long for Arsenal, England, everyone. I think maybe he needs a rest. He needs some time off. But I think that's a big issue for Arsenal to solve. That midfield isn't working right now. It just simply isn't working. And the issue is, since the midfield isn't working, the attack is slightly lackluster, to be very honest. They in few of the matches, like even the Chelsea match, I think they had a lot of good chances, but they just weren't able to convert them. And I think Premier League, to me, it already seems it's a very difficult job to kind of come back from this 9-point lead. Especially, I mean, I know they have all the matches against City and all those things that will also happen. Liverpool is also now a big match for them. So I think Premier League is a big ask from Arsenal this season, but they should at least be challenging in the Champions League, in FA Cups and all. So I think that's again, like you said, the fans are getting impatient, or I mean, not right now. I think by the end of the season, if they see this inconsistent form, they will be impatient, because they've been kind of looking at this whole process for 3 or 4 years now. I think you need something to show for that progress. Otherwise, like, what is the difference between a Pochettino Spurs versus an Arsenal's Arteta's Arsenal? It's a similar. We've seen the progress. We've seen the team being kind of built, and the team is performing really well. When you look at them play, and you are like, oh, it's one of the best teams that I'm seeing in Europe, but there's absolutely nothing to show for it. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Arteta, and I do think if not anything, they should at least aim for the cup competition and try to win those this season.
Yeah, I think one trophy, like, or some trophy, an FA Cup also would be enough to, like, get the Arsenal fans going, that, okay.
Yeah, there has to be something to believe.
Exactly.
There's something to hope
Exactly.
for.
I think the best analogy you gave was Pochettino's Tottenham,
Yeah.
where they were finishing second, third, or even reached the finals of the Champions League, but they had no trophy. It was the same. Like, if you look at it, Spurs are the same as they were like a few years ago. It's just that they were playing the Champions League.
Yeah.
Right. And now I think the most interesting thing that I've seen this season was, Chelsea started really well, right? Chelsea, finally got their form with a very underperforming season, right?
Yeah.
They were finally starting to pick up. Jackson found his form early in the season. But I think the biggest problem with Chelsea I saw was, that in the big games, they haven't been able to perform. Like, it doesn't matter if you're winning against the small teams, even though that's a major part of your, season. It doesn't matter if you're winning 8-0 against some team in the Conference League. If you're not able to perform against the big teams, they drew against Manchester United, they drew against Arsenal, they lost to Liverpool. And I do feel like players like Cole Palmer, Jackson, or, the wingers are doing well. I think the wingers are doing really well. Pedro Neto has been doing really well. Madueke is getting a lot of the ball. But I think you should expect a little more from players like Cole Palmer and Nicholas Jackson, who seem to be a little, inconsistent in big games like these. They're performing very well against mid to low table teams, but I think in the big games, they do need to step up a little more. I do think that Cole Palmer is responsible for most of their creativity. He also scores goals. He also sets up those goals. He's the absolute backbone of Chelsea right now.
Yeah.
I feel like, I know there's a lot of pressure on him right now, but I think he needs to step up in those big games, or else Chelsea won't be able to, like, challenge for the title properly. They're still third. It's not a bad position to be in. They're
Yeah.
9 points off Liverpool, but again, I feel like you should expect from like players like Cole Palmer who have already established themselves with extravagant numbers, and it's not like he hasn't performed in big games. He scored in the Euros final,
Yeah.
so we know what he's capable of. And to see him struggle against the big teams, I think against Liverpool he was more or less non-existent. Against Arsenal he did play well in bits and pieces, but for a bigger part he was sort of like lost and was not able to create or
Yeah.
provide as much as he does for the team. So I do feel Cole Palmer is somewhat inconsistent against the big three. What are your views on Chelsea right now, and considering last season and considering how they started this season?
Yeah, yeah. I think in general the context with Chelsea is pretty important. I think we finished 12th last season, so in like if you look at from a big picture point of view, it's a really good season for us till now. Like we are in third place, which is like something which we did not expect. I think there's a lot of issues in terms of our transfer strategy, our squad building, our kind of ownership. And I think despite that, we've been able to work very well with the new manager and the new kind of players who've come in and the squad size that we have. But I agree. I think especially in the big matches, I think our big players haven't kind of shown against United, Arsenal, Liverpool. I think all three matches, there've been moments in between where you see a good pass, where you see something. But I agree. I think they've been able to, because last season it was like the first season everyone was seeing Cole Palmer for the first time or kind of figuring out what this guy is on. I think now this season there is a lot of teams who are marking him really well. I think in the Arsenal match, Thomas Partey was constantly on him, and he was given very little space on the ball. But that is what happens with superstars. This is like, this is going to happen if you are the best player in your team. This is something you have to deal with. And I think I'm not too concerned because, again, like I said, I think we are in a better off position than what we expected for, and something that we didn't thought that we will be in. So from that point of view, I'm pretty happy with being in third place, kind of not losing to Arsenal. But like something like a United match where they were coming off a bad form and we were coming very hot in form and everything. I think those are the kind of matches, especially where we've not won in Old Trafford for like 11, 12 years. I think those are the matches where you actually want your team to like completely control the match, completely outplay the opponent. I think that's been slightly missing in the big matches, especially. I think we've been able to do it well with other teams like Newcastle. We played really well. Other like Conference League matches, we've kind of outplayed everyone. So I think we've in general we've been really good. But I think given it's like a transition sort of a season, the manager is new, the team is also settling in. We still don't know who is our best, let's say the front three and all. So I think from that perspective, I'm fine. But I do agree. I think it's been slightly disappointing to see the main Jackson and Cole Palmer perform in the big matches. Hopefully they'll pick up the form. Last season, he scored a hat-trick against United. He also scored against City. He also scored in the Euros final for England. So I don't I have any doubt on his caliber. I know he is Cole Palmer, but yeah, I think we've yet to see him to perform in the big matches.
But yeah, I think overall this Premier League, how we sort of started in the beginning, said that Premier League has become a one-horse race or a two-horse race. I think this is like by far the most interesting start to a Premier League season I've seen in the longest time.
Yeah.
I know there have always been teams competing, but I think a lot of credit needs to be given to the teams that were supposedly mid-table or low-table, because if you look from like third to ninth, there's just a 1 point gap.
Yeah.
Like you see teams like Arsenal, Liverpool and City doing well, but you expect like that out of them. But you're seeing teams like Nottingham Forest, who 2 years ago wasn't even in the Premier League, Brighton, Hove Albion, Fulham, Newcastle again has been doing well for the past few seasons. Aston Villa again, I can say, has been doing well for the past few seasons.
Yeah.
But like that's the interesting part, where you have like 6 teams separated by 1 point. Brighton has defeated City, Nottingham Forest has defeated Liverpool, and I feel like we're going to see a lot more upsets which will look like upsets but aren't exactly upsets, because these teams are playing really well. Fulham has like great players. If you're an FPL fan, you would know that Emil Smith Rowe or Raul Jimenez have been doing really well. Even teams like Brentford have players who have been performing really well. Mbuemo is one of them.
Yeah.
So I think like overall, if you look at it, like I can't really blame these top table teams for not performing as well, because there's a lot more competition than it was than last season. I don't know why there is that.
Okay.
But I do feel like it's a good, interesting start to the Premier League, given that every club in its own way is performing, except Manchester United, of course. I mean, I'm sorry if you're a Manchester United fan. I hope Ruben Amorim is a good manager, but apart from Manchester United, I feel like every good club is performing.
Yeah, no, that's the interesting thing about Premier League. I think there's like Manchester United you talked about. There's no kind of hierarchy of top six team that they'll finish top six irrespective whatever happens. I think that's been broken for sure. I think if you are not at your level, there are so many teams who will kind of take up your place. Spurs who were like playing decently well this season, they are 10th right now just because they played badly in few last two games or something. And I think there's just with the Premier League money that there's there, I think a lot of the smaller clubs, they've been able to kind of invest really well and kind of build a team which works really well for them. I think Brighton, we've seen for a few seasons that their talent acquisition is really, really top notch. I think they always continuously find new players. Caicedo, NDD, now Baleba. There's also Minte, Adingra. Even like they also get the best out of players like Welbeck and everyone. So I think Brighton altogether is a really good case study of how a good club can be run through. If you have like the prem money, this is how a good club can be run, even with like their limited resources as a history of the club. But I think what has been really good to see is teams like Nottingham Forest and Fulham. I think Fulham again this season they've recruited Emil Smith Rowe, Iwobi, Andres Pereira, Raul Jimenez, even Joachim Anderson in defense. I think they've been able to build a really strong backbone for the team, and that's we've seen it in multiple matches. They've performed really, really well, and even Nottingham Forest is just very difficult to beat. They are so solid defensively, and I think Milinkovic is a player that they signed this season. He's been really solid. Murillo, he's been really solid. Sels has been really good. So that defense, I think all of these teams have a niche of their own. And they've really been able to build their squad kind of behind their manager, behind a style of play, which has suited them really well. And whenever we've seen kind of one of these top six teams not perform really well, they've capitalized on it. They've taken their chances, and they are in like you said that the gap between the third and the ninth position is 1 point, which is like anyone can finish in the Champions League spots, anyone can fall out of the Champions League spots, and there's constant pressure on those top three teams to like you can't lose your focus or anything of that sort. So yeah, I agree. I think Prem altogether we've seen it the gap between Liverpool, City, and the rest of the league was too high. I think that gap has kind of reduced a little, and I think even within a lot of the bottom teams have also gotten really better. So along the middle of the pack, I think that is some real intense competition there. I think you cannot predict who is going to finish third or who is going to finish 10th or anything of that sort. And that is what is interesting to see about Premier League, I think, right now, that all the matches you go into, there's someone or something which is happening which is really exciting. So yeah, I think I'm also looking forward to this Premier League season a lot. I think I want to see how it ends, who is going to win. It's still very unclear. Who is going to finish in top four is still very unclear. So it's going to be a very exciting season, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you look at La Liga, right? Barcelona has had the worst form of their life and still managed to finish in top four every season.
Yeah.
Atletico Madrid, no one knows how they perform every season, but they still managed to make the Champions League spot.
Yeah.
I think this part here is very good for a league as whole. That okay, if you're not performing well, it's okay, we'll take your place.
Yeah.
A team like Nottingham Forest, like Leicester has won the league, and we thought that was a one-off thing, but I mean, the way this league is going ahead, I know, again, City has a lot of monetary advantage. Liverpool and Arsenal have, again, have a very good built squad that, that has been there consistently over the years.
Yeah.
But, like, the way Premier League is progressing now, I will not be surprised, like, in a couple of years or, like, 3-4 years down the line, we'll see another Leicester type of a season by a random team, say, like, Nottingham Forest winning the Premier League 3 seasons. And that's a great part, because that is why people love Premier League. That is why people used to call Premier League the best league in the world, and that status that was removed for the past 6 to 7 years, given City and given Pep City's dominance and that Liverpool uprising. I feel like that is going down, and that's very good to see as football fans. Like, I don't support any team in the Premier League,
Yeah.
and for me, it's so exciting to see that I open the team and okay, anyone can be top four, anyone can be top six, and anyone can sit. Like Tottenham is sitting at 10th, and like they can be top four tomorrow.
Yeah. Football is healing.
Football is healing, yes. And with football is healing, I think given that football is healing, maybe the players are not. I saw I saw a lot of England players like the likes of Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, even Colville, and a lot more players at the end minute dropping down of the England squad.
Yeah.
Like again, they've said it's injury concerns, and I know Cole Palmer has been injured. I know a lot of players have been like Foden came in the season injured as well. But do you think a lot of that is also to do with the fact that there are so many games that players are getting so frustrated, so automatically they will be more in like they will get injured more often, and like this whole fixture where like I get it if I'm a player like Cole Palmer, if I'm a player like Phil Foden, I don't want to play like Finland and Republic of Ireland every other international break. It's just not like appealing to me.
Yeah.
Because they're like not exactly on my level. Like I would rather play a team like Bournemouth over them. And I won't feel left out being dropped out from this England squad. And this is not just happening in England, this is happening overall internationally. Mbappe also dropped out. Like I know people are saying he didn't get selected, but no, like Deschamps openly said it out that it was a mixed decision of like both of them that we're not picking up Mbappe for this time. And I feel like that is what is happening, that one part of football will always suffer when you have these many games. There's also the Club World Cup happening at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So players will rarely get any break for the teams who are playing in all of these competitions. Like a Chelsea or like a Real Madrid or even Atletico Madrid. A lot of clubs are not playing, but most of the big clubs are competing in the Club World Cup as well.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing so many injuries this season. We're already seeing so many players complaining about it. Rodri was the first person. It was followed by a string of players who were constantly saying that, we don't want to play these many matches, right? So what do you think of this whole, cluster of things happening with the international break, with more games in the UCL, with all of that?
Yeah, no, I think a kind of NBA concept is coming into football right now, which is like load management. I think the players have started doing on their own. I think they've kind of started to prioritize things of football matches which they feel will be good for them to play in, or something where they shouldn't kind of risk injury for. Like, again, like the whole concept of UEFA Nations League, I think it hasn't been able to. The whole idea was to make friendlies a lot more enjoyable or add purpose to it. I don't think so. It has been able to do it, especially for the bigger teams. I think for the smaller teams, you can still argue that for Norway, where they don't qualify that much, maybe there is a lot of value there. But I think especially like a team like England, France, Spain, they would rather not their main players be injured. And we've seen it like like Chelsea, Arsenal players, City players, and all. They know the kind of fixture list ahead. They know the kind of matches they are playing. A Bournemouth in Premier League is probably more valuable than, let's say, Republic of Ireland in international break. And players realize it, and they realize that if they're not feeling well, if they're not up to it, they should take that decision of like choosing which matches to play for. I think this will happen a lot more given the way the game is being kind of planned, commercialized, and kind of the fixture list is created. I think this will continue to happen. I think international has always been one of those things that a lot of fans, they don't look forward to international breaks and all. I think it's only the World Cups or Euros which we enjoy. So I think that issue will always remain. It's just that I think the players are very actively kind of voicing their opinion in terms of the fixture list. I think even Guardiola also recently said that the matches will rise to 75-80, which is close to like an NBA season. I think there's going to be a lot of these things that we are seeing, a lot of resting of players, a lot of kind of missing out on international breaks, a lot of kind of long leaves due to injury or kind of recovery and all. And I think this is just going to be the way the new football is going to work. And I think the only way I can see this working is all these teams with big squads with 30 men, kind of 30 good players or so, they kind of utilize their players a lot. Because if you look at December, or you look at even the end of season kind of fixtures, it's going to be absolutely crazy with a match every 3 days or so. So yeah, I think it's good on players that they are prioritizing the matches for themselves, they're prioritizing their health. and I think it's kind of a call to whoever is organizing that maybe in the lust of kind of adding more quantity to the game, maybe you're suffering on the quality of the game.